Welcome to Monday. How's that attitude doing? Well, today we're going to talk about attitude. I love this quote. I often use it in my classroom as I'm teaching the nurse leaders of tomorrow, and it says, your attitude determines your altitude. You see, a lot of times people will come into various situations with the weight of the world on their shoulders. And the problem is, we know it. Your attitude shows it. You come in and you're negative and you're complaining, and it's always an issue because you don't know how to separate what you're going through, how you feel, from what is true and what is factual. So your attitude is up and down, is mean, is angry, and people are not able to work with you on the level by which God would intend, because your attitude is just not one that we can mesh with at the time. Now, let me tell you, if you're not a believer, if you're not of the household of faith, then this message may not penetrate your heart and convict and convey in the way that it would a person that is a believer. Because once you become a child of God, the expectations for you are quite different than what they were when you were not a child of God. When you become a generation that has proclaimed Christ and to have Christ in your heart, children of God, your representation matters. Who you are and how you act, it most certainly matters. And you can't use that same excuse over and over. Well, this is how I've always been. This is just who I am. Let me give you a great example. My husband and I and my kids, we, before the pandemic, let me put that asterisk out there because we're not doing these things now. But before the pandemic, we used to love to go out to eat. Love it. And at one of our particular restaurants that we would go out and eat, we built a rapport with the maitre d', with the owner of the restaurant, everybody. But there was this waitress, one waitress, and it was not that she said the wrong thing. She come up and she say, "Good evening. What would you like to drink? What would you like to eat?" She would say the right things, but baby, that attitude, it was so dry and just unenthusiastic about being where she was. It was just really hard to get in tune with her. Like, you even tip differently with a person that has a dry attitude because you're not quite sure if they enjoyed serving you in that customer service role because of their attitude. And so with one of the when the owner would come by and speak to my husband and I just asked one day. I said, "Is she okay? Is everything?" He said, "Yes, that's just how she is." But to be just how she is, when you are trying to fulfill the mission of Christ, you're trying to show that example that you know, there is joy in the Lord. You can't walk around grouchy and sour and then tell folks, well, you need to have joy in the Lord. Well, what happened to you? Where's your joy? What happened to your attitude? Y'all, we represent Christ. We have to make sure that our attitudes are adjusted accordingly. So Philippians 2:14 through 15. This is the English Standard Version. You may choose to look at this scripture at any version that you would like. Just a little tidbit out there. We had people that say, well, if it's not King James, then it's not a real translation. Well, let me explain something to you. If it's not in Greek and Hebrew, then it's not the original text. King James is a translation as well. So, anyway, read it where you can understand it. That was the point of that. Do all things without grumbling or questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent. All things without grumbling and questioning. Lord, why I gotta do this? What somebody else could have did. I always get dumped on. Why is this happening to me? Without grumbling and questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God. Children of God. This is where it matters. This is where you are to be separate and set apart, distinct, that royal priesthood, because you are a child of God. If you're not a child of God, then we can anticipate attitudes being everywhere. We can anticipate it being a issue from time to time because there's nothing backing that attitude that you have. But when you know the truth of God, you've experienced the Spirit of God, and you have the joy of the Lord, there is no reason why we should have grouchy believers walking around with no confidence and no hope. Faith is nothing more than hope, things hoped for. If your attitude is negative, you have no hope. Then if you have no hope, do you not have any faith? That's a probing question. It's the truth. I didn't say it. It's the definition of it. It's in the Bible. It's in Hebrews. Look at it. Blemish in the midst of crooked and twisted generations, among you whom shine as the light in the world. You cannot be the light if your attitude is not adjusted in the response that no matter how bad things are, I have to have hope and confidence that it's going to get better. So if I have hope and confidence that things will get better, my attitude will be positive. If my attitude is positive, then I change the entire perspective. I shift the trajectory of what I think could or might be into what I know God can and will control. That's the whole purpose right there. When you walk around with a negative attitude, when you walk around being grouchy and being sour, and you are a child of God, when you act like that and you say you believe, what you are really saying is that you don't have confidence that God is able to fix whatever it is that's going on with you. You don't have the confidence that God is able to provide you with all of the needs that you have, which his word promises that he will do. You don't have the confidence that he will never leave you nor forsake you, so you're not alone in this thing. When your attitude is negative, you are basically saying you're representing God in a way that says, I believe he exists, but I don't know how much I believe in him and trust him. We can't do that. We serve a mighty God. And so this week, if your attitude starts to transition from being positive to being negative, I want you to stop and I want you to think, what's going on that makes me feel this way? And then I want you to, for whatever problem you said you have, and it can be something like, I don't have enough money to pay my bills. I want you to go find the scripture that says, and he shall supply all of my needs according to his riches and glory. It can be something as simple as, I don't feel good today. I just feel like I'm always the one sick. I want you to go find a scripture that says that his grace is sufficient. When he told Paul, Paul said, 3 times I've asked you to remove this thorn. And God said, is my grace not sufficient for you? Whatever problem you have that would cause your attitude to be sour, there is a holy decree from God that's in the Bible. Go find it. Repeat it to yourself. Change that attitude. Life is too short to be walking around here sour and negative and then influencing everybody else with your sour and negative self. We don't need that. We don't need that. God has been too good. Too much has happened for us to know that God is real. Too much has happened for us to know that we can trust him. Too much has happened for us to know that we can continue to lean on his word and that he is a God that does not lie. Say he shall not be mocked. Shall not be. That means what he said, you can bank it. Take that check to the bank because you can cash it. Okay? It's so much bigger than you. It is so much bigger than you. And what you don't understand is you may be the only God that somebody sees that day. So I want you to ask yourself, if how I treated that person, if how I treated that situation, if the attitude and the things that I said, did it represent God? If I was the only God that that person saw that day, the only thing that could have let them know there is a higher being, a higher calling, something that can give you joy unspeakable, something that could make my crooked places straight. If I was the only representation for that day, did my attitude match the goodness of God that He has been in my life? If your answer is no, it's okay. You got time. Ask God to forgive you and then fix that attitude. I hope that this helped you today. I hope that you get to the point where you realize when things happen, life is not over. Try it. Let's see what happens. And depend on God to bring you through whatever it is that's going on with you. Stop allowing your emotions and what people say, what people do to determine how you're going to react. It's so much more than that. Be blessed.